Welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I am Justin.
And today we're going to be talking about Japanese folklore, oddly enough. You have... Why don't you just give the audience a little bit of a chuckle and describe the book that you're working out of?
Okay, so I've got this book called Japanese Myths and Legends. So
Yeah.
it goes into some Japanese mythology, and then the book is kind of presented almost in a timeline format in certain sections.
Okay.
It goes over the the creation stories and a lot of the Japanese gods, and then it moves on to ghost stories, and so there's a ton of material in this book.
Okay.
And I think some of the translation, I'm not going to say liberties were taken. I think that it was like the authors that wrote the stories took them and wrote them in their own words, which is not a bad thing.
No, I mean, so I went over to, look and see what I could find for free over on, Archive or whatever. And, I definitely found books where, hey, yeah, we kind of... these are the stories, but I kind of retold them in my own words for clarity's sake kind of thing. As opposed to, here is a copy of the original calligraphy ink version of the story that I found in a Japanese library, and I'm gonna translate this thing word for word. That I don't think anybody did that, or I don't think very many people did that, especially not back in the day. They were just like, oh, here's the story, and here's the characters, and here's the things that happened. But it wasn't necessarily a, like most things that go through an oral tradition. There's probably a lot of writer freedom to kind of move things around a little bit or state things a little bit differently.
Yeah. So there's a lot that came out of it because of the way it was written, where it's clearly taking from the story, and yet it's written in a way where it seems like the authors were not giving it any extra flair. They're pretty much telling the story from the way it reads. But they definitely they insert a lot of translations of the names, which I'm skeptical to a degree. I'm trying to believe that the people that did these were experts in their Japanese mythology and so forth.
Well, so here's a question for you. How old is this book?
Let me see. Flipping over to the front of the book here, we have, this edition first published 2022.
Okay, so it's a recent book.
Yeah, in London.
It's not like the stuff that I found that's gone into the public domain that was copyright 1908.
Well, no, it says this edition. I can't actually find the original copyright. Where in the world is it? It should be on the same page. Why?
It should all be on the same page, yeah.
Yeah, this edition first published 2022.
Does it say which edition it is? Does it say third edition?
It does not.
Well, that's odd. Who's the author?
The author, it's edited by J.K. Jackson, and the foreword is by Dr. Alan Cummings. So I think it's multiple authors for different parts of it. So I'd have to look at the, let's see.
What's the title of the book?
Japanese Myths and Legends.
I may as well look it up. J.K. Jackson is one of the... Well, it might be a different J.K. It's interesting because if I feel like I just found the name J.K. Jackson recently as someone who was like one of the early translators of the Water Margin's Tale.
That's probably true.
But
I'm
in that
not
case,
seeing any author names under the stories.
yeah.
So
Well, no, but I'm
I
just
mean,
trying to
it
hold on a
shouldn't
second.
just say edited though. Like, who worked on this?
Oh, it was J.H. Jackson that did the translation. In okay, so I was thinking that this book might be a really old book because so a guy named J.H. Jackson did a full translation of the Chinese classic Water Margin in 1937, and so you said J.K. Jackson, I was like, well, if it's the same guy, of course it's K versus H, and so yeah, this might be recent for all I know.
Yeah, there's a whole biography and text source thing in here. So these were texts that were pulled from other works.
Okay.
Many of them are the core body of tales in this book have been selected from F. Hadlin Davis's Myths and Legends of Japan.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so there's a lot of it that came from there, and then there's a bunch of other sources here. So yeah, this is just a collection kind of thing, and that's why it doesn't have an author's explicit name on the cover.
Sure.
But in so being, that means it is, a bunch of different translations pulled from different sources. I mean, I suspect that all of these people in translating this stuff would know better than me, but I see some of the names in here, and since I don't know anything about Japanese mythology, I would have to see the Japanese to see if any of this is really suspect.
Yeah, that's pretty common. I mean...
But it almost looks like they took direct kanji translations for the names, which would totally make sense in a Japanese standpoint.
Sure.
But it also seems like I'm trying to picture some of the kanji in my head that would make these names up. Like, Amaterasu, the sun goddess, was known as the Heaven Illumine of Great Deity. So that could totally be 3 kanji strung together for heaven, light, and great deity. Or 4 kanji, I guess it would be.
I mean,
they probably
we can just look up
God.
Amaterasu and see what those kanji are.
Well, it's weird, though, because some of this, like, I don't know enough about ancient Japanese to know where Quanan comes from, but Quanan is a KWA spelling, and I don't know if that's transliterated from a KUA.
Oh, I've seen that too. Yeah, that was in the book one of the books that I looked at too. Actually, I was like, that doesn't look like common Japanese, but
yeah.
So I'm just at the Wikipedia article, but like Amaterasu Omikami, often called Amaterasu for short, also known as Ohirume no Muchi no Kami, is the goddess of the sun, but Ohirume, big sun, no Muchi no Kami. So I don't know what Muchi could mean a lot of different things, but like...
Oh, Muchi Kami, great god. It's a very Muchi god.
Yeah, Muchi. It's thought to derive from the verb amateru, to illuminate or shine in the sky, combined with the honorific, while O Mikami means great august deity. O plus honorific prefix mi plus kami. And then... Yeah, so Amaterasu is a verb. It comes from a verb, which I guess makes some sense. Ohirume is meaning great woman of the sun or daytime. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is true that Japanese has evolved over the last 1,000 years, so, there are going to be readings of kanji and stuff that are going to be archaic, which is definitely a thing.
Right. So do you think we drove enough of the audience off now that...
I hope not. I hope that people that are, interested in this, I mean, maybe, but, for anyone who's still here, Japanese is a weird language, and there's a lot of weird cultural stuff that happens, and individual characters can have multiple readings, and those readings can change over time, and there can be special versions of the readings for names specifically.
Oh, okay. We're gonna do an aside here to kind of make this. I'm gonna make this a little more entertaining to
make
dissect,
it fun. Yeah,
it is fun. It is fun to dissect the Japanese language.
Yeah,
possibly not violently. Control yourself, but
I mean,
it's fun. So
it's the land of the samurai. Dissect it violently.
Yeah.
Dissect it like it refused to bow as you walked by.
Exactly. So you got the idea.
Yeah.
So there's a series of books called Pirate Girl Yuki. They're young reader books. They did have an English translation, I found out.
Well, 1 or 2 of them did.
Yeah. And this series of books was apart from being one of the craziest premises I've ever read in anything, not just children's books, but like anything ever. I mean, it was all over the board. It's like time travel, pirates, robots, magic, you name it, it's got it.
I mean,
but it's essentially a story about these 3 pirate girl apprentices who are helping out this other pirate girl who's this youngish, 1920-ish looking, 1920 age looking, not the 1920s.
Right.
Girl who
she wasn't a flapper, captain. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, she is not a flapper.
Okay.
But she's a pirate captain on this ship.
Yeah.
And, there's a bit of a crazy story about how she's actually a time traveler and she's actually like in her 40s, but because she has a time stone, it keeps her young. Yada, yada, yada. There's another scientist that used to work with her in a lab in the future. He's trying to get all the time stones so he can rule the universe. Okay. Really, really crazy story.
I mean, Japanese children's stories are often like that. Right?
It's incredibly fun. Like, for a children's story, I want to read them all. I think I have the whole collection. I've read 4 of them so far, but the third one is the one I want to bring up here.
Okay.
Because it kind of gives a good example of the fun of looking at Japanese terminology. There is a saying. It's dai nojini, which means to look like the character for die in Japanese, which not like death die, but like pronounced die. The word means big. And the kanji, the specific symbol in Japanese, it looks like a T with the bottom end split, so off to each side.
Yeah.
And so when people say dai nojini, they're talking about that shape, and it's used to describe, in a certain chapter of the book, one of the pirate girls is being lazy and just laying down on the job. Yeah. And she's spread-eagled with her arms to her side. And
that's exactly the word I was going to say, is spread-eagled.
The
character for big in Japanese looks like a person spread-eagled on the ground, ready to, just about ready to make like a snow angel.
Yeah. And so the fun part about this particular word, though, in this context, is that one of the characters yells at her and tells her to stop lying there in the dai noji shape.
Yeah.
Which is just a way of telling someone not to laze about. However, one of the translations for dai nojini is sluttish, or to be a slut.
Oh, God.
And so I'm reading this book, and I look it up, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I run it through my head, and I'm like, she technically just told this girl to stop being a slut and get to work.
Yes, but no.
No, I mean, obviously no, but I'm looking at it like it's a legitimate translation. It's totally not the context, but it's a legitimate translation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little spicy, even for a Japanese kids story.
Even for, I like that.
Even for. Well, I mean, we've all seen Dragon Ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, what is Dragon Ball's worst crime? That Goku's a kid with a bit of the old dangly bits showing up briefly.
I mean,
literally just a C inside a bigger C.
No, I mean, like there is there are elements of that story that go on because of that probably wouldn't fit into that. People would say, like, this doesn't belong in a children's story.
Yeah. I mean, there's some jokes about Bulma. Okay, so there's the joke where Bulma loses her panties and doesn't realize it.
Exactly.
And, yeah. but we won't. Would that count as I don't think that counts as a spoiler. Whatever.
Let's just say no spoilers and move on. All right.
Yeah, no spoilers. So now that we've been canceled by
everyone,
the majority of Japanese historians.
And Western society.
And yeah, well, we were already canceled by Western society long ago.
Fair.
We've been canceled by Western society since we did the Pippi Day. So
But Pippi's part of Western society.
Yeah, well, I mean, how many we got canceled by Sweden and I believe Wisconsin twice in that same episode.
That's true, but at the same time,
I mean, that covers most of Western society. There's pretty much little in between going from one to the other.
I mean, that's true.
You have dairy and you have meatballs, and there you go. That's everything you need to know about Western society.
It sounds right to me.
So, I do have some funny bits that come out of this book. I'm wondering if we should save those to the end, if you want to do your bit first, or if
I don't have a bit. I just read a bunch of folklore stories and
I'm using
figured
bit
we'd
in
talk about them
the
in general.
Australian sense. You're part of it.
Part of what?
If you want to go over some of the stuff you did.
I just read random stories. I don't really have much to say other than, like, let's talk about some stories.
Okay, this is what I mean.
There, my bit's over. Now it's your turn.
Yes, it was a good bit. Okay. So you read what I'm assuming are more like folklore, folktale stories, whereas I probably read a bit more mythology.
I'll read some titles to you. That way the audience can see, like. So the book that I found. So first off, I had a book of, like, children's stories that was, like, illustrated and both in English and Japanese. And so I bought it because it was kind of a neat little thing to put on my bookshelf. But I read through that, which was about 100 pages of very sparse English text with Japanese below it that I didn't bother to actually translate. So it's, goodness knows how close it is. But it was written by a Japanese person, both the English and the Japanese, so I assume it's probably pretty good. But it included stuff like the story of Kaguya-hime in the bamboo thing and Momotaro and stuff like that. And then I went over and I found another book, and it contains a bunch of other little stories that kind of range from, 4 to 6 pages. This one was less, like, written for children and more written for a person to maybe read, and maybe they could read things to a child. Like, it wasn't illustrated in like a cartoonish sense, but it did have some, like, prints of, like, woodblock paintings and stuff like that. So, we have, like, The Choice of the Princess, The Phantom Cats, The Sordid Falcon. And most of these are just kind of like little Aesop's fables from Japan, basically. Don't be mean to people. Lots of little basic morals like that. And some of the stories didn't even really have morals per se, but were just like, here's a neat story that introduces some god or goddess in Japanese folklore. I mean, there was a lot of, like, there's in like the Mirror of the Sun Goddess here. They talk about Izanagi and Izananu, and they just don't really do anything. Instead, what happens is that they're mentioned, and then they're like, they have 2 children, Amaterasu and Susanoo, and Susanoo was the god of the sea, and yada yada yada. Susanoo killed Ukemochi, and there was a thing about the sun goddess getting angry or sad and locking herself in a cave, and then they had to kind of get her out of the cave with a golden mirror.
I've got a good bit for exactly that. You just went over a lot of what I read about, so this is going to be enjoyable.
Okay.
But yeah, tell me again. You said Izanami, and what was the other one? Because I think I've got a different name in my book.
Izananu is the way that it was written in the book that I'm looking at.
Okay, because I've got it as Izanagi and Izanami.
Okay, well, that might be. I mean, it could be. You know what it could be? It could be like it got messed up in, like, an edition or something like that. Like, it's very easy for MI to become NU if you have, like, a bad print,
Yeah. And so a bunch of people borrowing from the text got the alternate name.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, I don't even necessarily know which one is right. Like they're both phonetic Japanese, at least.
Yeah.
But I think Izanami is correct.
I'm pretty sure Izanami is. Izanagi sounds correct. I don't. I don't really know. Though.
I have Izanagi, though the one the one that I think the one in this book says Izananu.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's Izanami.
Nanu.
Yeah, Nanu is not a very common combination in Japanese, as far as I know.
I'm struggling to think of a single.
I'm struggling to think of a single word that has Nanu in it in Japanese, and I'm coming up blank.
I mean, there can be an ending Nanu if it's like a.
That would be like
ending, like a negation or
yeah,
without. It means like without.
Yeah, right. So there could be some verbs in some conjugations that end that way, but like that would also be like it would be a verb. It wouldn't be the name of a thing or a person or a deity or whatever.
All right, now that we've scared off another 15% of. Were there any stories that really stuck out to you, or anything really interesting?
There were some fun ones. Like the Phantom Cats was kind of cool, where there's this guy who, like, he basically stumbles into like a bunch of, gosh, what was it? I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but like, yeah, there's this guy kind of wanders into a bunch of phantom cats that are terrorizing some village, and then there's just like a dog, and he brings the dog to where the cats are, and the dog kills the cats. The end.
That sounds like a typical Japanese story.
And saves
I'm always
the city,
reminded. And saves the city.
Yeah. It's like Air Bud, but like times 1,000.
I'm always reminded of the story of
just gonna let that pass, huh?
I mean, if there's anything that warrants a bit of mythology, it's definitely Air Bud.
There we go.
That would be very influential Western mythology, more modern mythology.
Oh yeah, when aliens pick up the ashes of our dead civilization, I'm sure they'll find a copy of Air Bud.
I don't doubt it. You laugh now, but I'm telling you, the furries will keep that one alive long enough for aliens to discover it.
I hadn't thought of it from that angle, but you might be right.
I don't know why it was the first angle I thought of, but there it is.
Well, we'll let the audience figure that one out.
Yes, we'll leave it to the imagination. Yeah, so...
Here's a great one. I'm sorry, let me interrupt you one more time.
No, go ahead.
I read a story called The Sword of the Clouds of Heaven, and the story is about this one guy with a magic sword, and he fights a dragon or something, but the end is great. I'm just going to read it. And Yamato hung up the sword at the holy shrine of Atsuta, where it rests to this day, and the Mikado said, "Henceforth shall it be called the grass mower, and it shall be one of the 3 precious things of the Mikados." But Yamato made answer, "As the deeds of the gods are greater than the deeds of men, call it not grass mower to honor Yamato, but still let it be known ever as the sword of the clustering clouds of heaven." And it's like, thank God. Someone in the audience is like, oh, thank God. Grass mower.
Oh man, this is why I love Japanese folklore. It's always like this. There's a story. It's something like Urashima, so and so, some kid that lives in a fishing village, and he goes fishing to support his parents.
Right.
And he saves a turtle from some kids that are abusing it. Now pay attention here to the reward that he receives for saving this turtle. You tell me what the moral of this story is. Turtle shows up like 2 days later, and it's fully grown, and he's like, "Hey, bud, thanks for saving me. Want to go see the underwater dragon kingdom?"
Yes.
And, Urashima is like, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's go." And so he jumps on the turtle's back, somehow doesn't need to breathe, is taken underwater to the dragon kingdom, where he has a party with the princess there for like 2 days, does some dancing, has a good time. And then she gives him a box and says, "You never open or look in this box," which, right there, that's where the red flags should start coming up. Like, he should really be reconsidering his tete-a-tete with this underwater princess.
Right.
And then the turtle's like, "Well, that's enough fun for now. Let's go back up to the surface." Turtle takes him to the surface. He gets on the beach. He steps off. He starts taking a walk, looking around. There is no one around that he recognizes. This is not his town. And he's like, "Did the turtle screw up? I think the turtle screwed up." But then he starts to slightly recognize things, and he's looking around. He's like, "This is my village, but everything's changed." He goes to the house where his parents used to live. They're gone. It turns out they've been dead forever. And he's just like, "Well, wait, huh?" And it's a story about how time passed more while he was underwater on the surface in some like bizarro gunbuster light speed kind of style without any of the physics to back it up.
Right.
And he's just like, "Well, this is stupid. I'm going to open the box." Like, that was the conclusion he drew. It's like, I've got nothing else to do.
No, I have that freaking story here somewhere.
Yeah, then he opens the box and ages and dies instantly. And the moral of the story is shrug, ? LOL, K thanks, bye. I don't know.
The moral of the story is don't open a box if someone tells you not to open a box.
But that's bullcrap. It's like, you go to an underwater magical kingdom and someone just hands you a box and says, "Never open this." It's like, okay, keep it here. If you keep it here, I can't open it. It's like, no, you got to take it with you. No, keep it here. I don't trust your stupid box.
What if you trip and fall and it opens and it's not your fault?
You know what it is when someone hands you a box and tells you to go somewhere and tells you not to open it? It's a bomb. That's what it is. You don't do that. You don't take that box. Now, I know this precedes bomb technology, but I think someone in Japan was cooking up something.
No, I mean, the Chinese had gunpowder by this point, so,
yeah, I mean, okay, this is true. And I'm sure the Japanese did too, but...
Well, them being,
very close neighbors, yes. I mean, they tried to keep the Buddhist monks from wandering over. It was impossible. They're like
Yeah.
cockroaches.
Well, I mean, they already stole characters. We know that they're in contact.
Yeah. I mean, they stole all of them. Literally all of them. They're like, writing system? We don't need one of those. And then they stole it. And then they were like, you know what? Maybe we do need one. And they invented 2 more.
Yeah.
So,
well, what they did was they took a bunch of... They were like, but we have words that aren't designed to work with, like, pictographs. So what do we do? And they're like, I don't know, pick a pictograph that sounds like that, and then use that. And they're like, but it has, like, 37 strokes to just say, ah. And it's like, well...
Look, just run with it.
Simplify it down. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, so they end up with 3 written languages, and it's all because nobody sat down. People were too busy writing stories about kids opening boxes in the future and turning to dust, when they could have been writing stories about how you shouldn't be greedy and want 3 separate writing styles for your language.
Exactly.
I mean, I know that's coming from the West, where we have printing and cursive. But you know what? That ain't too bad. We've only got 26 letters we're working with here.
Yeah.
30-some if you're dealing
and let's be fair, cursive is optional.
Yeah, cursive is optional. In fact, I haven't met too many people that can read cursive that are younger than me at this point.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were one of the last generations to actually get cursive in school, so...
I think my nephew's generation was the very last one.
Could be, yeah.
And he's not too much younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Japanese folklore. Anything else? Anything else you want to talk about concerning what you read?
I mean, some of them are pretty simple fables with, like, really simple morals. Like, there was... there's one that the moral of it is just, like, don't be mean to people. And then there's the one where the moral of it is just, like... I read... What's it called? It's called... Let me see. The Nightly Wastepaper Man. About a guy who gets kicked out... a guy who's a samurai who gets kicked out of his work. And so he becomes a ronin. And he decides not to kill himself, thank goodness. And so he goes to, like, some town, and the guy's like, "Oh, you can buy waste paper, and then we can do stuff with the waste paper to be profitable." And he's like, "Okay, cool." And then the guy has to teach him how to buy waste paper from people, and but at the same time, he's just, like, very generous and very kind to people. And he's like, "Oh, we are in dire distress." But he finds the samurai who pointed him toward the waste paper guy, and he's like, "Oh, well, we'll help you out. We'll give you 100 yen, and or something." No, it was 25 gold ryo, which is like an ounce, basically 25 ounces of gold. And then the guy is like, "I have 25 ounces of gold. Can I buy something with this?" And the guy's like, "You stole it." And he's like, "No, I didn't." And then, like, there's this whole nonsensical, like, back and forth of, like, "You stole it." "No, you didn't." "Okay, let's prove that you didn't steal it." And then they prove that he doesn't steal it. And then the guy that accused him gets killed for bearing false witness when he really shouldn't have done that. And then, like, the money goes back to the guy who gave it to him. It's just like it's like hokey pokey with 25 ounces of gold.
That is one of the most Asian stories I've ever heard. Like when it got to the point about collecting waste paper, I started imagining this being a movie in my head, and just, like, that's the part where they have the advertisement that's like, thrilling action, adventure.
Well, I mean, like, if it were like a movie, you could have Jackie Chan be the waste paper guy, and then he gets into some cool kung fu fights where he has to, like, jump onto the thing that he's using to carry the waste paper around. Like, that could be a thing. I mean, it's not very Japanese, but it could be a thing.
I think the most Asian part is the idea that, wait, you have money? You must have stolen that. That is the absolute most Asian part of that story. Like there's so many Chinese and Japanese stories that I have read where it's just like, that's not your money, even though it's clearly their money.
But, like, it's funny because the guy, like, he like goes to the guy and he's like, "Well, I want to buy something with these with these 25 gold ryo," and the guy's like, "You stole that." And it's like, if you know that the penalty for bearing false witness in a case involving 25 gold ryo is death, why would you bother bearing false witness in that case? You don't gain anything by doing so.
Yeah, and the alternative is that gold could be his gold.
Yeah, right.
So like, what? I don't know what was happening in ancient Japan, but I suspect it involved some kind of, like, fermented rice or something.
Sure. Or sake, as they call it. There's one story where a woman. Okay, so we've heard this kind of story in the Bible actually, where like a rich man gives a bunch of money to charity, and then like a very poor old woman gives like a single penny. Right? There's that parable
Yeah.
where it's like, well, she's given more of what she has, and therefore her giving is more like laudable because she's given more of what she has. And there's a story like that in here where a poor old woman is like, I want to buy a lantern for a temple, so she sells her hair and buys one tiny candle with what she got for selling her hair, and then a rich man comes up and buys 1,000 lanterns, and then a wind happens, and all the big lanterns that the rich man made get blown out, but the one candle that the woman bought stays lit, and they're like, ooh. It's like,
that's a very silly moral. First off, I didn't know that they had TikTok back in ancient Japan, but I guess they did. Was she also selling like bathwater and?
I mean, they didn't. There's not a lot of discussion of bathing in this book. Honestly, let's be fair.
That's that's fair, but I mean, imagine you're the wealthy person, and it's like, no, I'm giving money to the temple so that they can help poor people. Why are the poor people also giving money to the temple? Stop it! Oh my God, the gods have approved of them more than me because they're stupid.
Well, then there's the fact that like they're just lanterns. You can light a lantern again once it gets blown out. It's not like there was a flood and all the big lanterns floated away, but the one candle remained there. It's just like it was just a wind. They just take the candle and light the other lanterns. This is not. There's no reason why you wouldn't do that.
I mean, the wealthy guy should have kept picking them up and lighting them again, and every time they got blown out, just like throwing his arms up in the air and saying, well, gee, I sure would like to give more money to this temple, but I'm so busy lighting these candles.
Yeah.
But it's okay, because it turns out a lot of the Japanese gods are silly.
Well, there's some of that too, right? Like, there's definitely...
there's a lot of it.
Some stories where like they introduce a god, but he doesn't do anything in the story. It's just like, oh, okay, here's the name of a god that I guess we're gonna go deal with somewhere else.
Yeah, we're about to get canceled by the Mikos because there is a lot of that. And I have lived long enough to where I can say the sentence, "We're about to get canceled by Mikos." So
congratulations.
Yes. Yeah, it's with dotage comes wisdom. So, unless you've got any other significant things that you wanted to go over, would you like to hear?
If I had thought about it more carefully, I would have written some notes down, but I didn't write any notes down. I just read the book and was like, okay, cool. I kind of have a passing familiarity. But yeah, it's a weird mix of like Aesop's fables and Aesop's question marks, basically, is what I read.
Yeah, and a bit of Grimm's fairy tales in there too.
A little bit, yeah.
Except in Grimm's fairy tales, they would have been like, you stole that gold and then murdered that guy in cold blood.
One more. I read one called The Angel's Robe. An angel comes down to Earth, and she drops her robe, and a guy picks up her robe, and he says, and she says, oh, give me my robe and let me return, for I pine for the pearly gates and golden streets, which I think is probably a little bit of liberty taken with the translation there, with the pearly gates in there.
Just a little.
But and the fisherman says, I will return it if you will dance for me. First give me my robe, that my dance may be more perfect, she said. No, my beauty, he answered, for then you will fly away, and I shall never see you dance. Fie upon you, base mortal. Deceit was born of man, the heavens know it not. And so then he hands her the robe, and she dances, and she flies away. The end. Oh, no, it's not the end, because then he's like, wow, that was a really pretty dance. Now I won't appreciate anything on earth ever again. The end.
Her revenge.
Well, it's better than Taro, right?
Yeah, that was
Urashima
Taro.
Yeah.
I was struggling to remember his first name or last name or however you want to look at it.
I don't know whether that Taro is a recent addition or what. That's just kind of, I remember Urashima no Taro or something like that.
Well, if it wasn't that specific story, I've heard that story told in some form or another.
It could be something else, yeah.
Yeah. So
what do you got? What do you got for me?
What do I got? Well, I mean, I've got the story of... well, not the story necessarily. I have a lot of the background of Izanagi and Izanami. And like you, I did not take notes. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this out from memory. Which,
all right, go for it.
May or may not be 100% accurate, but it's going to be
We all know that you have a better memory than I do.
Why do people keep telling you? I forget like everything I'm doing constantly, and at work everyone tells me I have a great memory.
If you read things, you remember them. If I if I read things, I forget them.
You read to forget. That's look, you're a physicist. You've got a lot to keep up on. I understand that.
Yeah.
We all know that physicists don't bother to remember everything. That's why it's all written down.
Look, I mean, if it can't fit on a 3x5 card for an exam, it's not necessary.
Exactly. Wow, that's deep. Especially for physicists, because then it turns into an engineering question of like, how much can we fit on an index card?
Either that, or like I'm greatly overestimating the value of entropy equations.
All right.
Look, if you want the efficiency of a heat engine, an idealized heat engine, I can get it to you, but that's all I can do.
But that's all you can do?
Yes.
What happens when you fix your cars? Jesus.
How are you assuming that I fix my cars and that they remain
Well, now I'm
cars?
assuming that fixing your cars involves recreating the sun on Earth somehow.
Look, it's just an idealized heat engine. It's not a
and don't even
real
know
heat
it.
engine. Look, gamma ray bursts will do that. There's nothing I can say about that other than that.
All right. I will not be moving to your state anytime soon. I need to keep that curvature between us, apparently.
Well, it's a question of altitude.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably pretty low altitude by comparison here. We're pretty well over the horizon. So yeah, let's go over that horizon with Izanagi and Izanami.
Go for it.
Who did a bit of horizon going over themselves, which actually I'm wondering just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
This story, now that I'm thinking about it, like, when did they know that the Earth was round? Did they always assume it was round in ancient Japan, or is this story more recent than I'm giving it credit for? Because this is a story about Izanagi and Izanami. They're like they're in like heaven or whatever you want to call heaven.
Sky.
They're on the floating bridge of heaven.
Sure.
I'm cheating a bit here. I'm actually looking at the page.
That's fair.
But yeah, it's the floating bridge of heaven, and they wanted to know. Okay, so this I'm just going to read you the first paragraph, and then we'll move on to what I know from memory.
Okay.
Izanagi and Izanami stood on the floating bridge of heaven and looked down into the abyss. They inquired of each other if there were a country far, far below the great floating bridge. They were determined to find out. In order to do so, they thrust down a jewel spear and found the ocean. Raising the spear a little, water dripped from it, coagulated, and became the island of Onogorojima. Or, as they put in parentheses, spontaneously congeal island.
Wow.
So, it wasn't actually very spontaneous. I mean, they did it purposefully, but whatever. I guess the congealing
what if the gods
wasn't
are metaphors?
Yeah, it could be. So anyway, they go down to Onogorojima? Yes, Onogorojima Island, which is Onogoro Island. And they say, "Hey, okay, let's do the whole marriage thing." And Izanami is like, "Yeah, let's do that." And so they start walking in opposite directions around the entire circumference of the planet, meet up on the other side, and which one was the female? That was Izanagi. Izanagi was the lady friend of this equation.
Okay.
And she's like, "Oh, sweet, I've run into someone, let's get married." And Izanami becomes furious and says, "How dare you talk first, now we have to do this again." And so they walk around the entire circumference of the planet again, meeting up a second time in which he speaks first, and then they get happily married. They give birth to apparently a bunch of islands, which is where land comes from. I'm not going to ponder the specifics of that, but they also give birth to some children, namely, as we already discussed, a Madaras, who is immediately sent to heaven because, ooh, you so pretty, so you're going to go be the sun and shine down on everything. Works out great, everything's going fine, and then they give birth to Susano. And Susano is a complete dick, just messing with people, murdering, breaking things. And they're like, "Okay, you need to go live in the underworld. That's going to be your bit." And he's like, "Okay, cool, fine. However, I would like to see my sister first."
Mm-hmm.
Pretty reasonable request. It's like, "Yep, I'm going to go be living there, so may as well go visit her one last time." Goes to see Amaterasu.
Just real quick, I just want to interrupt, because there is a story called The Mirror of the Sun Goddess in the book I was looking at that talks about Susano being a dick. And I figured, I'll just quote this. Amaterasu sent Susanoo one day upon an errand, for she wished him to find a goddess named Ukemochi, who lived in the reedy moors. When Susanoo found her, he was tired and hungry, and so he asked her for food. Ukemochi took food from her mouth to give him, and this made him very angry. "Why feed me with foul things? You shall not live," he cried, and drawing his sword, he struck her dead. When he went home and told Amaterasu what he had done, his sister was in a great rage and left her brother in total darkness. She fled to the cave of Ameno, and closed the entrance with a huge rock. Then was all the world dark, for the sun goddess no longer shed her light upon men. So terrible was it upon earth that at last the other gods met together near the cave to consult and see what could be done. ...
Yeah, so you got a much more like folklore, actual storytelling of what happened there. My version.
I just like the fact that there's this creation story that has two gods that supposedly created everything else, and then one of their kids goes and finds another god that's totally unrelated to them, and is like, "Can you feed me?" And she's like, "Here, have some food from my mouth." And he says, "I'm going to kill you," and then kills her.
Yeah, it's
very
weird.
Japanese.
It's very weird like that because they do run into other gods constantly in these stories, and it's never really told where those ones came from. And so you just kind of have to assume that it was Izanagi and Izanami and that they weren't important enough to be mentioned in the creation process. Which
Something
they
like
probably
that,
aren't, because we're going to get to Uzumé. So, essentially, I got a little bit, maybe not different version, but maybe a bit watered down version of what you just said, where Susanoo was in heaven, and at first Amaterasu she gears up when she hears that he's coming. She's like, he's going to be a dick. So she grabs a bunch of arrows, wears a quiver that'll carry 1,000 arrows, and another quiver that'll carry 500. And then she pulls, she's got her weapons all ready to go, and Susanoo gets there, and he's like, "Well, I'm kind of offended. Your brother comes to visit, and here you are dug in like you're about to go to war with me." And she's like, "Oh, you know what? Sorry." And so they hang out for a while. Everything seems to be good. And then Susanoo goes around stomping on some rice fields and probably killing a god or two here and there.
Yeah.
So finally, Amaterasu's like, "He's scary. I'm dipping. I'm going to run off to some cave." And that's about the extent of the description I got. It's like, "Ooh, scary, I'm out." And so she buggers off to a cave and locks herself in, and all the other gods kind of show up, and they're like, "All right, let's throw a big old party." And they're under the sakaki tree, they're hanging out and making a bunch of noise, and then this other goddess Uzumé decides that she's going to throw on a headdress made from the sakaki tree, jump up on a table, and I believe the term that was used was proceeded to dance in a very lewd manner, which heavily implied that she was dancing naked on the table. So Uzumé is like let's call her the fan service, the goddess of fan service. Essentially, is what's going on here, because she really is. She's like a wild one, jumping up on the table, dancing. Everyone's laughing and cheering. It's the dancing naked Uzumé that gets Amaterasu to peek out of her cave and be like, "Oh, this looks fun," and join the party, because Amaterasu is fickle, and she completely forgets from one moment to the next what she's doing.
She's fickle like the sun.
Yes, yeah. Which there is no regularity to the sun whatsoever.
It would be insane to even suggest such a thing.
So she gets out of the cave, yada yada yada. They go back to heaven. Somehow Susanoo ends up back in he's back in the underworld.
It's the next episode.
Yeah, it's the next episode. We get a cutaway like a modern Netflix movie where we go back to Izanagi and Izanami for a while. They're having a bit of a tiff. Something happens with Izanagi, and she gets injured. I don't remember by what, but she runs away, and
wait, who runs away?
Izanami runs away, and
okay.
I forgot already which one was which. Izanagi, the wife, runs away.
Okay.
And Izanami is like, "What the hey?" And so he goes to find her, and he climbs down to the underworld, which is apparently where you run away to when you get injured as a goddess.
Sure.
And he visits a dark cave and finds Izanagi, and lights a torch to see her. And Izanagi throws a fit. She's a typical woman. She's like, "I don't want you to see me without my makeup on." And so she freaks out that she's all ugly now, and she forces Izanami out of the cave and locks the door. And Izanami bangs on the door and starts shouting at her. And then he says, if you're not going to let me in, then if I can't see my own wife, then we're getting a divorce. So he's yeah. So they divorce between a door because she didn't have her makeup on. and didn't want to be seen. And he runs off, and she curses after him and sends 4 of the ladies of the underworld, which are apparently her minions now. I don't know why. Chasing after him. And so he hightails it out of here, because here's these 4 like Nightwalker wenches crawling after him. And he's like, oh God, what am I going to do about this? Pulls a comb out of his hair, throws it on the ground like a smoke bomb. It explodes into grapes, and the 4 women immediately forget chasing him and eat the grapes instead. So now I know how to handle being run down by women in the street.
Yeah.
Yes.
Throw grapes.
Well, I would throw grapes. If you're a god, you throw a comb, which becomes a grape. Now, combs, if you remember from when we talked about Grimm's fairy tales, everyone was being put inside of egg baskets to be transported around through some like Doctor Who Time Lord, bigger on the inside magic.
Yeah.
And in Japanese literature, it's combs. Combs do everything and can be anything, and that's what the gods use to solve a lot of their problems. So we go back to Susanoo, who is the villain of the story apparently, and a complete dick. So naturally, the first thing that happens when we get back to Susanoo is he's in the underworld. He runs across a couple who are clutching their daughter and crying, and he asks them what's going on. Mm-hmm. In the midst of this, they tell him that there is a serpent with 8 heads that's going to eat their daughter because it ate all of their other daughters, and they, for some reason, did not move to another town. So they have 1 daughter left out of like 9 or 10 or whatever, however many were eaten by this serpent.
8 plus 1, yeah.
Yeah. And Susanoo is like, oh, well, I mean, I'm the hero, so I will go ahead and save you from this, because that totally tracks. That is, I mean, 100% in character, like Luke Skywalker in the Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So he comes back and sets out 8 bowls of sake, because creatures in Japanese...
to get the dragon drunk. Yeah,
he gets the dragon drunk and lops off its heads. He also lops off its tail, finds a magic sword, and because he's the good guy of the story, he sends the sword up to heaven, like, hey up there, all you gods up there, have this magic sword, because I'm one of the good... I'm going to keep stressing that.
Yeah.
He is apparently now the hero, and saves this couple's child for no reason, when he was just stomping bodies left and right earlier. And then he becomes the top resident of the underworld. He's
the brother of Amaterasu, the sun, and so he must also be fickle, like the sun.
Yeah, or like the darkness, which is definitely fickle because it's not always there.
Yeah.
But the important thing to remember here is that we got a bit more of the comb mythology out of this. So his way of saving the daughter, which I don't understand how this worked. There's a couple of elements that were a little confusing. Number one, if you're an 8-headed serpent that has probably survived for centuries in Japanese folklore, how do you let yourself be taken out by specifically 8 cups of sake that are clearly sitting there ready for you when you get there to eat someone? And it's like, there's not 8 people here. These must be
no one had
for
ever
me.
tried it before.
I mean, it was ancient Japan. You could be right.
Look, if you had 8 heads and you were walking down the street and you found 8 cups of something that you like to drink, you'd be like, wow, this number exactly corresponds to my number of heads. That's not suspicious at all.
It must be my lucky day.
Then you would clearly partake.
Yeah. I mean, I don't partake in too much street sake if I can help it, but I mean, you can't pass up an opportunity like that. So you get your head lopped off, and you get...
The fact that you have 8 heads and that there's 8 cups there is evidence that it was put there for you.
It's divine providence. And it literally is in this story, because Susanoo is a god.
Because Susanoo is a god, yeah.
So yeah, but to protect the daughter, even though clearly it wasn't... Part of the plan doesn't seem to involve the daughter at all. He just has to get this snake drunk. But for some reason, the daughter also can't be visible. Because I guess the one thing that's more attractive to a snake than drinking 8 random cups of sake is eating daughters. So, the daughter had to be out of the picture. So Susanoo turns her into a comb and puts her in his hair. At which point, I'm just like, what? How versatile is this whole comb thing?
Okay, everyone listening to this, that what was not rehearsed. You might think that we had this lined up, or I just say what, but no, that was a genuine what.
But you can kind of see where I'm reading this, and I'm constantly chuckling to myself about what's happening, because it really is just thrown out there like, all right, so now I'm going to turn you into a comb and put you in my hair so you're hidden, and then we'll fill up a bunch of cups with sake, because that'll trick this snake. And then the snake shows up, and there's clearly people there. It's like, what did it do? Did it sit down and have a brief conversation and sip up the sake? And then it's like, all right, it's sword time. Lop, lop, lop.
Yeah.
Oh, and just the thing of it, like, why does it have a magic sword in its tail? Did it eat it? Was it stabbed? I don't know. They didn't really describe it too thoroughly. I'm sure it's in the mythology somewhere.
Yeah.
But there it is.
So that story that you're telling is the story of the grass mower. So in the book I was reading. So that was the magic sword.
So the snake must have crawled onto someone's lawn, and they ran over it with the mower, and one of the blades got stuck in its tail.
Maybe it's just a lawnmower blade.
Yeah, it's it's like Sling Blade for ancient Japan.
Well, no, I'm thinking like a modern lawnmower blade. What if someone like accidentally left one in Japan via time travel? They'd be
I guess it would look like a magic sword.
Number one, we don't have the metallurgy to make this kind of steel. Look at how long it stays sharp and how flexible it is. And then they'd be like, well, we'll call this grass mower.
Yeah, I mean, it's got like some grass clippings on it. And
yeah, exactly.
It's like, clearly someone was taking down some plant-based mythological beast from Japan. I'm sure there's at least one or two.
Or grass.
Yeah, so there you have it. I mean, this is what goes on. Oh, and then one of the grandchildren of Izanagi and Izanami. Mm-hmm. I'm forgetting the names here. Let's see. I can probably find it. They called him the August grandchild. August means something that I'm not aware of because I've seen it in Japanese mythology before. And
August means just auspicious.
Is it? Is that what it means?
I think it does, yeah.
I feel like I looked it up once and I couldn't find it in a dictionary, and I was just like, okay, whatever.
I think it's the same. I think it's the same root word in Latin as auspicious, right?
Possibly.
August is the because
you're asking the guy that doesn't know, so
yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, so the grandson's name is Ninigi, or as they put it in this book, Prince Rice Ear Ruddy Plenty.
Okay.
I think they went too literal with the kanji translations with that one.
I don't think that there's enough kanji in there for it to be that.
Well, I don't think there's enough in Ninigi. They're probably leaving out the last name or something.
Maybe.
Or it's a shortened nickname. I mean, this is probably one of the ones that was just pulled from someone else's translation. You can't
shorten Japanese that way. It just gets really, really confusing.
Yeah, but I mean, this is what we got to work with.
There's already enough freaking homonyms in that language.
Well, I mean, almost every word is a homonym for something else in Japanese.
Yeah, because they stole that. Because they stole the Chinese system of writing, but not their tonal system. So
yeah, well, thank God.
So the Chinese person says 8 different words, and the Japanese are like, I'm gonna say ko, and they're like, no, but it has a. The Chinese guy is like, no, but it has like a tonal thing where you raise the pitch here. He's like,
yeah, I'm just gonna go ko.
Language becomes much more confusing when you remove this vital element of information that's in the words themselves.
Having studied Japanese for as long as I have, I am fairly certain that only the Japanese truly understand Japanese, and nobody else possibly could.
You're not wrong. So
back to Ninigi, which I am not going to repeat Prince Rice Ear Ruddy Plenty.
You just did.
I'm not going to repeatedly repeat it. That was a one-off repeat.
All right.
So I don't even care that much about what's going on with Ninigi. He was on some trek to go and find his kingdom. Doesn't matter, because Uzumé pops up again, and they come across this beast, and Ninigi is like, oh my god, troops, fall back, because this beast will kill us all, and I guess we're just...
Wait. He had troops?
Yeah, he had troops with him. He just had a bunch of... There were troops. I don't know.
Generic troops?
Yeah, generic godly troops, I guess. Well, I mean, okay, so I'll look at the sentence here. It says companions. Ninigi and his companions had hardly broken through the clouds and arrived at the eight-forked road of heaven, when they discovered, much to their alarm, a gigantic creature with large and brightly shining eyes. So they come across this creature, they freak out before anything happens, and they run and hide behind a bunch of rocks, like that scene in Monty Python's Quest for the Holy Grail, where they hide from the rabbit.
Well, I mean, there's that, but then there were also scenes like that in like Sanjuro, weren't there? Where, like all the bumbling guys all hide all of a sudden.
Yeah, there were.
Okay, so this is something
that you can picture it like that.
Japanese, art.
Yeah, so of course Uzumé is there again, and she's just like, Okay, giant beast, whatever. She walks right up to her. He's like, hey, trying to get through here. Trying to find a kingdom for this guy. Out of the way. And he's like, actually, I've been sent here to escort you. And she's like, oh, that works out. Okay, so, hey, everybody, it's all cool. Hop on over here. And then Nenigi pulls his companions out there, probably hangs his head in shame as he walks past Uzumé, who until this point we only know as the naked dancer on the table.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know, I kind of feel like out of his humiliation and embarrassment.
Now she's the brave naked dancer on the table.
Yeah. She's the one that faced down the giant beast. So I feel like that's why this story concludes the way it does, because as a reward to the beast for guiding them, and also apparently as a reward to Uzumé for being the one that stood up to the beast and told it to get out of the way, she tells the beast that, hey, you can have Uzumé as a bride, which I'm sure Uzumé just loved. I'm sure that was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Thanks a lot there, Chief. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Uzumé is my favorite character in the anime of Japanese folklore at the moment. I'm going to continue reading this so that essentially, I don't know if we'll actually do this, but I floated the idea that maybe I should give a weekly update on where I am in the world of Japanese myths and legends, just to see how ridiculous it gets.
I mean, if you find anything ridiculous and write it down and we just talk about it for 5 minutes each week, I am totally down for that.
Yeah, because that is ridiculous. I did read a little bit past that, but I felt like that was a good stopping point. Just like, Uzumé saved everyone. She gets a beast.
She gets married.
Congratulations. It's all been arranged.
I outrank you. Not anymore.
Nobody's going to take your rank seriously after the table incident. I thought we weren't talking about that anymore. The sake was definitely flowing that night. I literally brought Amaterasu out of the cave, and you're still going to hold that against me. He's like, yep.
See, in the story that I read that was in this book, they used like a golden mirror to like shine light. Let me see if I can find this real quick. The mirror of the sun goddess.
Well, we're going through the Kadokawa anime version, so we get Uzumé dancing naked on a table.
I guess.
Yeah, the mirror just doesn't hold up to that. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so a number of... Okay, so it's supposed to be morning. And so here I'm going to read this out here. A number of cocks were started to crowing, and the lovely goddess Uzumé began to dance to music from a bamboo tube.
That's all we get about Uzumé in that version, huh?
The gods kept time by striking 2 pieces of wood together, and one of them played a harp, made by placing 6 of their bows together with the strings upward and drawing grass and rushes across them. Great bonfires were lighted, and a huge drum was brought for Uzumé to dance upon, so she dances on a drum in this one. This she did with so much spirit and grace that all the gods were delighted. They laughed with joy, clapped their hands, and fairly shook high heaven with their merriment. Amaterasu heard the noise and could not understand it. She was annoyed because the gods seemed to be having such a good time without her. She had thought that they could not possibly get along unless she let the light of her face shine upon them. She was naturally very curious to find out what it was all about. So she pushed open the door of her cave just a little bit and peeped out. And there, by the light of the bonfire, she saw Uzume's graceful dancing and heard her sing Japanese, translating to, "Gods behold the carven door, majesty appears, rejoice, our hearts are fully satisfied." "Why does Uzumé dance, and why do the gods laugh? I thought both heaven and earth would be sad without me," said Amaterasu crossly. "Oh no," laughed Uzumé, "we rejoice because we have here a deity who far surpasses you in beauty." "Where?" demanded the sun goddess indignantly. "Let me see her." And as she spoke, she caught sight of her own reflection in the mirror. She had never seen such a thing before, and was greatly astonished. She stepped outside her cave to see more plainly this radiant rival, when lo, the god who was waiting seized her and drew her forth, quickly passing the rope across the cave door to prevent her return. Thus was the sun goddess returned to Earth. The end.
Well, I mean, that's how you have to handle hysterical women sometimes.
Apparently.
When they get to the point that they run and hide in a cave, it's kind of necessary. So,
yeah.
So now we have an Uzumé who, I'm going to go ahead and just gloss over that whole graceful dancing bit.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, this is like the censored version of the anime, I guess.
Apparently, yeah.
But now we also have an Uzumé that is trolling the other gods.
Yeah.
I
That
love it.
sounds.
Uzume really is my
I
favorite
mean,
character. It's like, yeah, there's a goddess out here. It's more beautiful than you. What you gonna do about it, huh?
she's way better.
We love this new goddess. She's so much better than the last one. Oh, that is fantastic.
There was a great story called The Mountain Rose, where there's a guy who's like walking through a forest, and it starts to rain, and he like finds a house and talks to a woman, and he's like, "Hey, can you lend me a straw coat?" And she doesn't say anything, but she hands him a mountain rose, and he gets really pissed off, and he like yells at her, and then he walks away, and then he comes back, and the moral of the story is that she was a mute. and the mountain rose has no petals, has many petals but no seed, which is supposed to imply to him that she has no raincoat for him, because the word for seed also is the same as the word for raincoat.
All right. Well, I mean, quite frankly, I would be angrier if I found out that was the interpretation of what she was doing.
Yeah.
I would actually go back to her house and be like, you couldn't have like done a hand gesture or something.
Or like just shook your head or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, some obvious. I mean, look, you clearly have made it this far in life without being able to talk. I'm assuming that you have some form of communication other than whatever roses you happen to have laying around.
Right.
Strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Oh, okay. So I found it. This is this is my version of the Uzumé dance scene, which I guess is the Japanese folklore equivalent of the anime Hot Springs episode.
Sure.
Let's see. Such extraordinary proceedings. Wait, no, is that it? No, this paragraph. When all these things had been duly accomplished, the 80 myriads of gods came down to 80 myriads. Izanagi and Izanami were busy.
Mm-hmm.
Came down to the rock cavern where the sun goddess lay concealed and gave an elaborate entertainment. On the upper
80
branches.
80 myriads?
80 myriads. So,
so
800,000.
Yeah, right. A myriad is actually. People mean myriad to just mean a lot these days.
Yeah, but it means what, 10,000?
The original meaning of the word myriad is 10,000.
Yeah.
It's Greek. So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so on the upper branches of the true Sakaki tree, they hung the precious jewels, and on the middle branches the mirror. From every side there was a great singing of birds, which was only the prelude to what followed. Now Uzumé, or heavenly alarming female, which is very fitting, took in her hand a spear wreathed with eulalia grass and made a headdress of the true Sakaki tree. So the whole tree, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Then she placed a tub upside down and proceeded to dance in a very immodest manner till the 80 myriad gods began to roar with laughter. So that's the version that I got. There's nothing in here about them using the mirror.
There's nothing in. Well, there's the mirror in there. Like,
but they don't use that to solve the problem. In this version, Amaterasu becomes curious and steps forth, and then once more it just says once more the world became golden with her presence. So they skip the whole kidnapping plot part of it.
Yeah, they just have Uzumé twerking on top of a drum.
Yeah, so I don't actually know which version is better because they censored both versions in a way. They censored the kidnapping aspect of your version, and they censored the immodest manner of dancing in my version.
Well, like, I mean, I think I can understand why they took the immodest parts out of mine, because mine is copyright 1908. So like, this is an old ass book, and it was probably not, like, this is not what we're not, if we did this, it would be too licentious for the modern reader.
Yeah.
Modern as of like the turn of the century.
Yeah, 1908-ish, Victorian almost.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there you have it. This is
pre Federal Reserve. We'll put that as the edge of the downfall.
That works for me. So what are we going to title this episode? Is it going to be like Japanese folklore? The Uzumé simping begins here.
I'll think of something.
Yeah, we can work a joke in there. I'm serious. Uzumé is like my favorite character in Japanese mythology at the moment. There's a lot of characters in Japanese mythology, and Uzumé shot right to the top because she's just in so many weird situations. I mean, not even the highest of which is twerking on a bathtub.
So, I'm looking at my version of the Urashima Taro story as well. and they mentioned that the sea princess. No, this isn't the. This is the Taro story? Just it's like in a weird form, but like the sea princess is going out and looking at mortals, and it says that she's riding upon a dolphin, and then there's a wood print, like an illustration, a wood print illustration that they took a picture of and put it in the book, and that is not a dolphin. That is a carp.
It's a book. Use your imagination. But there's a picture.
That's just a really big carp.
There she is riding on that dolphin again, sir. That's a coelacanth.
Oh, goodness.
Yep, on that dolphin. That is clearly a plesiosaurus. How did they know what a plesiosaurus was in ancient Japan? What is going on here?
Well, they just have all that, information. They just know it, like the world being around and stuff.
Yeah, just imagine living in ancient Japan. I mean, you're constantly worried, like, are one of the gods going to try and see if there's a continent down here and stab me through the head with a giant spear from above? Like, you never know what's happening.
I mean, then there's the problem of, like, the original folk religion of Japanese was pantheistic, right? So it was like 7 gods in every grain of rice, just like this massive menagerie of random gods that do nothing.
There were 800,000 that showed up just for like a tiny little party where one chick danced.
Yeah, that's like,
and I mean,
7,000 grains of rice.
Talk about the most hillbilly Ozark bunch of gods. I mean, they're making violins out of bowstrings.
I mean,
and keeping time with 2 sticks. I mean, I can only picture like 7 of them toothless around a fire.
What is a banjo but a harp with only a few strings?
It's got as many teeth as the banjo has strings. Banjo has
Exactly.
1 string. I stand by what I said.
I don't know. I'll think of a good title for this one because there's a lot of fun stuff going in here, and yeah, we'll figure it out. It's gonna work out. But yeah, let's. If you keep reading this, let's just go ahead and write down a note once or twice, and every week we'll talk about the craziest thing you read in this week about Japanese folklore. And
well, I'm not much of a note taker. I always screw that up, so I'm going to read a couple of pages here and there, and just try to remember the funny things from memory. We'll make it a little entertaining bit.
We'll try.
Well, yeah, we will try. Well, entertaining is in quotes here.
Scare quotes.
I mean, we've successfully now been canceled by 800,002 Japanese gods. So
yeah,
we are,
and all of Japan and China. So
yes, all of Japan and China. I think we were already canceled by China several episodes ago.
We do it again, right? It's like the Great Wall or something.
Yeah, sometimes they forget, and they need to be reminded to get us thrown off Twitter or the TikToks or whatever. I'm sure there's a Justin on TikTok somewhere.
Probably, yeah. All right, well, I guess we'll call this an episode then. This was there's I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of weird stuff in non-biblical Western folklore too. Like the Greek gods, the Norse gods, they all do a lot of weird stuff. So this is not like
that is true
unique to Japan.
That is true. However, these are the weirdness and the hilarity is heightened because it's translated from such a different culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we're not getting anything like rice ear ruddy plenty out of Greek mythology.
No, that's very true. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I mean, you do get gods that like turn into a bull and then seduce a woman as a bull.
Yeah, yes, you do, and you do get Athena growing out of the head of Zeus. And since my only real vision of Athena is that of the King of Fighters video game fighting character, it makes for quite some imagery, especially since my only real image of Zeus is the guy from that old movie with Hulk Hogan in it.
Yeah.
What was it? No Holds Barred, I think? Zeus the wrestler?
I have no idea.
There was a brief period in, I believe, the late 80s where everyone did the Zeus sign with their hands in elementary school.
I vaguely remember that being a thing, yes.
Yeah, I was amazed at how many people... When I thought back on it, I was like, wow, a lot of kids watch that movie.
I guess, yeah. Or Was he actually not like a wrestler? What was there?
No, the point of the movie, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, was Hulk Hogan was kind of a washed-up wrestler. This was back in the 80s, by the way. Just want to point that out there.
1980s.
And this other wrestler came along named Zeus, and he was just this amazing person. And this kid wanted to get Hulk Hogan to. He's not Hulk Hogan in the movie, obviously, but he was getting him pumped up for one more fight against this unstoppable guy. It's like, no, you're the old has-been, but you got to come back and stop this guy because he's just got too big of an ego or something. But it was one of the movies where it portrays wrestling as real, and so it's a no-holds-barred match where someone could potentially die. And yeah, I believe at one point Zeus rips a metal bar off of something on a...
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's @Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, @Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.